Welcome to the second edition of TheReadingRoom.com Great Reads. Today I'm really privileged to introduce you to somebody who has created an amazing fury around the world and got millions of people glued to their e-readers, and also somebody who has been described as the new poster boy of publishing world on independent publishing. I have a great privilege to introduce you here to Hugh Howey. Hi, Hugh.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You have created an amazing world in the trilogy of The Wall. We have been so far introduced to the first two volumes, and it is an amazing dystopian adventure that for anybody who reads it, they'll send it essentially shivers down their spine, especially if they are claustrophobic. And I think that at the same time, they will also your book will make them think of some serious issues, which is a great combination that will appeal to very many different readers. Before I ask you about the trilogy in general, I wanted to ask you three very quick questions. For those who already read the book, they'll know why I'm asking you that. For those who haven't read, well, that's an extra incentive to get them reading. So first of all, are you claustrophobic?
Yes.
I thought so. What is your favorite food?
Pizza.
Mm-hmm. And are you an optimist or a pessimist?
I'm an optimist.
Good to know. Wool is a very complex story spanning over almost 500 years. It involves a very large cast of characters, lots of events. How did you come up with this idea? And is that final product very different from what you initially imagined?
Well, I would say yes, since what I initially imagined was the first 50 pages. That's all I had written. And it wasn't until the demand for more came about that I dreamt up the rest of the world. And it has played out generally how I came up with it in that first outline. The details, of course, your characters surprise you along the way, but they're ending up at the place that I had envisioned.
Now, your story has a lot of themes, and you clearly thought about provoking some serious thoughts about politics, both international and domestic, environment, social systems. I just wonder if I was going to ask you, what do you think, as a writer and as a person, is the most important issue right now to solve, to save us from the kind of future you imagine for us? What would that be?
Well, unfortunately, I woke up this morning with a catastrophe back in the United States in the Boston Marathon, and it just occurs to me that we waste so much of our time and our resources hurting one another. And I am heartened by the work of Steven Pinker and the idea that civilization is actually getting safer as time goes on. I know that runs counter to the way we think of the world getting more and more dangerous, but the data suggests that the world is getting safer with every generation. And my hope is that we will continue that progress until the incidences like what happened in Boston today just become a barbarism of the past, and we spend our time and our resources trying to make for a better tomorrow instead of fighting the same old fights over and over again.
In some way, this actually leads me really well to my next question, because I thought when reading Wool, it was pretty obvious the line between the good and the evil. Or at least it seemed so. It was pretty straightforward who was on which side. Once you get into Schiff, these lines seem to be a lot more blurred because we see the same story from the different perspective. And suddenly that bad is maybe not entirely bad and that good is not entirely good. Is that something that you planned from the start, or is that again something that kind of appeared as you were writing the story?
It was something I'd hoped to do. I tried to do some of that in Wool as well, where the main bad character is revealed to have at least justifications for what he was doing towards the end of the story. And I have had some readers. I did a reading up in Camden here in Australia last night, and I had someone come to me afterwards and say that the bad guy was their favorite character because of these shades of gray and these complexities. So it's something I really set out to do. I don't like for stories to be predictable, and I don't like for characters to be two-dimensional. So I want my heroes to have flaws, and I want my villains to have purpose rather than just to be evil for the sake of evil.
Now, you're not the first writer who used the concept of deep freezing people and bringing them back to life later, but you use it in a very interesting way of bringing the world leaders or the leaders of the silo, bringing them back from that deep freeze in a time of difficulty. If that technology existed today, who would you bring out from the deep freeze to help us solve some of our big problems in the world?
I would bring back Mark Twain. I think what we really need right now is some wit and some levity, and the way that Twain could almost just with his incisive wit, he could slice the Gordian knot of very complex problems and debates. And I think if we could have a few of his quips today, we could get to the heart of some of the things that we fight about.
You also used a very specific genre, well, subgenre of science fiction, of dystopia, to present the issues that you've presented. And again, this is not a new genre. There have been classics in this for years and years and years. But in the recent years, we have seen a massive, massive resurgence of interest in dystopia on both publishing and reader side. What do you think it says about today's readers that these type of books are actually making to bestseller lists?
I think we're fascinated in dystopia the way almost all generations have been, because maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe it's the idea that our parents had it better, but we tend to think that the world is getting worse. I think it's getting better. If I wrote those stories, no one would read them, because optimism is just not in vogue ever, really. So I write stories that reflect the opposite of what I feel, which is that the world's getting better. And I think this has been a trend for every generation to think that the world's going to end in their lifetime.
If I was going to ask you if you have any favorite dystopian books, if you could give me, I don't know, 3 titles, what would you pick?
I would pick 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and Brave New World. I know those are the standard classics. But I love them.
Yeah. And of course, I have to ask you, what's going to happen after Wool? We're going to read Dust, and are you working on something new? Is it going to be another dystopian novel, or where are you heading?
I've got several works that I want to pick up after Dust. Dust will end this saga, and I'm going to leave a world for readers to explore in other ways, but I'm going to move on to, I've got a young adult science fiction series that readers want the next book in, and people want sequels to Halfway Home and The Plagiarist and all my other stories. So I've got to sit down like a reader when they finish a book and they get to look at the shelves and figure out what they're going to tackle next. I get to do the same thing.
Hugh, thank you very much for joining us here for this brief conversation at the Reading Room. We are all waiting for that, well, some of us who are already redshift, we're waiting for the last volume of the Dust. And I hope that the whole trilogy will become a classic, and probably another writer will be sitting here 20 years from now and remembering it as a great experience of reading. At the same time, I really hope that it will stay just that, a great story, and not some future survival manual.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.